Hi, it's Troy Griggs of the Ascending Wisdom. Today we'll be answering the question, does generational wealth last? Now, when we talk about generational wealth, first we probably should define what generational wealth is. Most people accept the idea that this is money that you inherited, was passed on. Realistically, it was money that you did not build yourself. And so your parents would be that first generation if they built the wealth. If you inherited the wealth, then you would be the second generation. If you are the children of the children, then you're the third generation, and so on and so forth. It is a question of what is it that you want to do. Most of the time I'm talking to people, we're talking about first generation wealth, and that's the beauty of just technology and advancements where more people are becoming millionaires, and there realistically more people have to become millionaires. Just because if you plan to retire, if you plan on stopping working, if you plan on buying your freedom and controlling your time and how you spend your days and how you allocate your priorities and show your values, that is something that you're going to have to really set aside. Now, if you are uncomfortable with the word millionaire, then we could talk about financial freedom. But just generally with inflation and time, $1 million is pretty much what you would expect basically due to life expectancy, some of the risk of your money running out, and just inflation in general. So if you understand that aspect, we could talk about it as financial freedom, financial independence, or as becoming a millionaire, because I want you to be able to purchase your freedom. And your freedom is going to cost somewhere north of $1 million. So generational wealth is the idea, at least the way I describe it to my clients, is the idea that you want to purchase the freedom for people outside of yourself. So let's say you've already purchased your freedom. You would love to purchase your children's freedom and your children's children's freedom, and maybe your children's 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 freedom. Is the idea that you don't want anyone that you love, that you're related to be a slave in the system that has kept your family from being able to exercise their freedom for so long, and you have been able to free yourself, and so you want to share that love. That is a very common feeling where it's like, oh my gosh, it feels so good to be able to not have to think about money, and that my money is working in a way where it generates revenue for me and it buys me my time back so that I can now spend my time focusing on things that I am passionate about, things that matter to me, communities that I would love to support and work for, dreams and stories that are on your heart that you would love to share, where you don't feel the tug of adulting and responsibility telling you that no, you can't do that yet. Wait for a little bit longer, and then a little bit longer, and a little bit longer. And then if you played your cards right, you get to retire at like 65, right? And that does happen. Some of us are getting to a point where we are not even able to retire in our 70s and our 80s, where we just have to continue working, hoping that we stay healthy. So more times than not, the moment that you secure your freedom, you often look around and you're like, hey, who else's freedom can I purchase? And if you are one of those people, then you're interested in generational wealth. And so generational wealth, when we ask the question, does it last? There was actually a 20-year study that was done by the Williams Group where they had about 3,200 wealthy families, and they followed them through the generations. And they found, I believe it was 7 out of 10 families tend to lose their fortune by the second generation. So the second generation would be like your children. And then 9 out of 10 families lost their wealth by the third generation. So that's your children's children. And that number can be discouraging to some because you worked so hard. You found a skill, a talent. You provided a service, made the world a better place, invested in companies, made your own companies. However you built your wealth, building real estate, whatever you did, you worked really hard because you wanted to purchase the freedom for your future generations. You left the money, and then we find out that the second generation, 7 out of 10 times, loses that wealth. And then by the third generation, it's just all but forgotten. And when we talk about this in financial planning, we often say, look, more times than not, the first generation, you understand everything you had to do to build that wealth. So you understand the value of the money, the value of the dollar. So you often are able to make decisions based on the skills and the mindset that you had to build the wealth in the first place. And 7 out of 10 of the second generation, it's because sometimes there's a disconnect when we pass the money along. And often the way we describe it is if you have a certain mindset and that mindset builds you a $50,000, $100,000 a year income, if I give you a bag of money, Ultimately, the mindset that you currently have is the lifestyle that you've created, the decisions that you make. And so, more times than not, you end up reverting back to the exact same lifestyle. And that's why you see where, like, millionaires, they say they lose all their money within 3 years of winning the $1 million. And because you have to change your mindset, your relationship with money, to be able to create the results that will maintain that wealth. And that is often what most people overlook. So when you ask the question, does generational wealth last? Well, for the majority of people, the answer is no. With generational wealth does not last because we don't take the time to teach the mindset transformation that we went through when we built the wealth. So as a result, our kids and our kids' kids especially, they're so far removed, they never really saw the work that you put in to build it. At least with your children, they're able to see some of the sacrifice, some of the habits. They're able to see firsthand some of the things that you did where they do try their best, but sometimes they just are lacking because we haven't really given them anything but the money. So we have to be able to pass along not only the money, but we also have to pass along our wisdom, our revelations, our understanding, the experiences that we've had. Because as you know, there's only two ways to get wisdom. One is your mistakes, and the other one is other people's mistakes. So if you pass along only your wealth, well, then your children can only learn from their own mistakes. Sure, you feel like they saw what you went through, and so they should have some sort of an understanding. And generally they do, but they don't understand the nuts and bolts of it. What I mean is, I can watch a bodybuilder, and I know realistically they ate healthy, they worked out, and they got big. But if you don't know what the actual day in the life of a bodybuilder looks like, what areas did they work out? How much weight? How many reps? What frequency did they work out certain muscles? And how many calories did they have to eat? Did they make changes in their meal plan along the way? It'll be very difficult for us to mirror them, even though high level we understand they lifted heavy weights and they ate pretty healthy, right? Very lean, not a lot of fats, a lot of vegetables, and probably not even a lot of fruit. They probably don't even have a lot of sugars and fruits. Like they're very lean in their meals. But if we don't really have a full plan, it's very difficult for us to understand exactly where we're going to be making those small tweaks. And it is in the small tweaks, because ultimately success is a few decisions made daily that give you the result that you would like. Very small decisions. And the same is true with failure. Failure is a few small mistakes made every day that compound into something over the years and over the decades. So as long as you understand it's a very small, very thin line, they usually call it the razor's edge, between success and failure. It's a very thin wall between where you're at and where you want to be. And it becomes just the wisdom that we need to get there. So if you want your generational wealth to last, well, first and foremost, you have to get retirement planning under control. If you don't afford your own retirement, how can you possibly pass any money on to future generations? You have to, at a minimum, make sure that you take care of yourself. Once you take care of yourself, then we can start figuring out what we're going to do with our kids. Some people, it's not as much about passing on the money as much as maybe if you want your kids to go to college, or they need to go to college because of what they want to do with their life, and you're able to help them or afford to pay for their college up front. That is generational wealth by itself. As you all know, college has become more and more expensive. So if you're able to start off with a clean bill, then you're already going to be a step ahead of many people. So that is already something you could do while you're alive that will also provide a benefit for each generation. If you just pay for the college, that's a gift within itself. Now, granted, we also do want to usually leave something behind, and more times than not, you do in a lot of ways, because if you're living off of the interest, that's really the only way to make sure that you don't run out of money. If you're spending down your principal, then you end up running out unless you know exactly when you're going to go. If you don't know exactly when, then generally you have to live off of the principal. That's just usually a good rule of thumb. Now, we can get in deep conversations about whether the 4% rule still works, or how I would decide how much I'm going to live on each month. But overall, you want to make sure that you leave yourself enough money that you're able to make sure that you can maintain your lifestyle for the rest of your life. Whether you retire at 25 or 35 or 65, you want to make sure that you have the money that allows you to maintain your lifestyle for the rest of your life. So on that note, if you have any additional questions about retirement planning, I invite you to check out my free retirement planning video training at obsidianwisdom.com/training. In this demo, I give you the entire wisdometric framework that I use with my clients to help them eradicate financial stress, generate a passive income, and build a prosperous retirement strategy. Until next time, Wisdomites, remember, wisdom is asking the right questions to allow yourself to get the right answers. Keep asking those questions and you will keep getting those answers. Continue blessings.